We are now on step 3 of our lesson plan, Theories, Chapter 1, and Slide 1.6. Before beginning this section, our first content section, it is necessary for you to have read Chapter 1 of the text. Then as we go along, have the text available so that you can follow the discussion. Chapter 1 discusses administrative theories. That is, the different philosophies developed to explain how organizations should function. The discussion basically began in the early 1900s with the advent of mechanized production techniques and has been evolving ever since. We are going to discuss 5 basic theories that have developed over time. They are, first, a discussion of theory in general. Second, classical theory, which consists of 2 parts, administrative and scientific theory. Human relations theory is third, behavioral science theory is fourth, post-behavioral science is fifth, and open systems is sixth. I'd like to begin talking about theories with this little anecdote. So there you are, hurtling down Interstate 8094 at 70 miles an hour, or whatever interstate is close to you. There's a semi-truck 3 feet on your left, 3 feet on your right, 5 feet behind you, and 5 feet ahead of you. Why are you still alive? How do you make it to your destination? I do that drive every day because I live 65 miles from work. So I know what I'm talking about. Each day I wonder. But the reason you make the journey alive is because everyone is following the same set of theories. That is, all the drivers are following the same ideas of how the world works. That's why you survive. A theory as used here explains how the world works. If it is a good theory, it explains how the world really works. If it is a bad theory, it does not. Racial prejudice, for example, is a bad theory because it does not explain the way the world really works. The value of theory is, therefore, the degree to which it explains how the world really operates. The driver who causes the accidents and deaths on the interstate is the one who is not following a good theory, is weaving in and out, is speeding in conditions that are not good for speed, is texting, or maybe all of the above. Unfortunately, these drivers tend to take the good theory people with them. So, of the definitions of theory in the front of Chapter 1, the one I think is the most useful is the predictive value of theories. The good ones actually predict accurately how an organization can function positively. We are now going to discuss the first theory. This is classical theory. Classical theory is also known as bureaucratic theory. It began as a result of the origins of the assembly line back in the early 1900s. There are 2 branches of classical theory, scientific and administrative. One thing that should be noted, whenever you're looking at administrative theory or the change over time, you have to remember that what was happening in education very often reflected what was happening in the society as a whole. So the reason that we were thinking about administrative theory back in the early 1900s in a business sense was because of the fact that the modern industrial revolution was just beginning. This is often true of changes in education. They reflect what's going on in society as a whole, which is why history is valuable. At any rate, the first branch of classical theory, administrative theory, focused on the attempt to determine how an organization should be administratively organized. Today we still owe these folks, like Max Weber and Henry Fayol, for example, a debt for developing the basic concepts of an organization. Concepts such as departmentalization, job differentiation, chain of command. However, these theorists tended to be top-down thinkers. The industrial leaders of the day thought of themselves as the ones best suited to run things, to give orders, so the whole organization was a top-down structure. We know today that this does not work, but unfortunately, we often keep perpetuating it anyway. Scientific theory, on the other hand, looked at a different aspect of classical theory. It was also stimulated by industrial growth. And it was the idea that there should be one perfect way of doing a task efficiently. An example was the study of a man shoveling coal. The shape and size of the shovel was examined. The amount of coal to be lifted was experimented with. The amount of effort taken to lift the shovel. All of these things were studies to find out the one right way to efficiently shovel coal. The problem with both of these theories was that the human factor was eliminated. Workers were interchangeable parts. It was the function of the organization that was most important. Henry Ford, for example, thought of himself as a reformer because he allowed African American workers to work alongside of white on his new assembly line, the first time that had ever been done. However, he set the speed of the assembly line so high that the worker exhaustion dropout rate was quite extreme. Ford simply fired those who could not keep up and hired more help. The problem for us in education is that we have adopted that same mentality and are always searching for the one right way to teach all kids, even though we know that there is no such thing. This factor, interestingly enough, is at the heart of much of the new reform that we currently see building in many states and the federal government. Check out, for example, the Indiana Department of Education, www.doe.in.gov website with Secretary Bennett's comments about the failure of the public school system. However, there were things in the classical theory that were valuable. And we draw from that. Those things were valuable, but remember that the two basic tenets of classical theory, that being top-down structure and one perfect way to do a task, simply do not work in efficient organizations. So let's look at the second theory, human relations. This theory actually occurred by accident. It's called the Hawthorne Studies. And some of you may have heard of the Hawthorne Studies by the name anyway. This was an electrical company, and they were experimenting with changing the working conditions, again based on classical theory, to try to determine what working conditions would stimulate higher productivity. And they had a control group, and they had an experimental group. Now, of course, they expected the experimental group to have higher production because they were the ones who were getting the changed conditions, different lighting, different environments, and they expected the control group to remain the same. What they discovered, however, was that in fact productivity of both groups improved. It then occurred to them that maybe, just maybe, people were important in the success of any organization, and they began to develop models and theories focusing attention on workers, which was the basis of human relations. At this point, we will pause for a discussion question. The instructor or coach will divide you into groups of 5. Each person in the group answers the question and posts his or her answer to the other 4. When each has done that, all 5 will comment on each other's answers. You may analyze, critique, add additional comments, but each person comments on each of the other group members' answers. The idea is to stimulate a dialogue among group members. This discussion is not graded except that all members are expected to participate. The question is, how does the focus of human relations theory differ from that of classical theory, and what are the flaws of human relations theory? When the discussion is completed, you may move on to the next item.